thank you as the 2020 Annual Catholic Appeal draws to a close.
Thank you to the Annual Catholic Appeal donors.
Thank you to the donors from the Annual Catholic Appeal.
From all of us here at Catholic Communications, we thank you.
Thank you from Rick's Place to all the donors from the Annual Catholic Appeal.
From the Office of Faith Formation, thank you.
This message from our grant recipients is for you, the generous faithful of the Diocese of Springfield.
Coming up on this edition of Reel to Reel.
The diocese enters into a contract with an independent firm to conduct focus groups with individuals who have been sexually abused. I'm Carolee McGrath. We'll have the story coming up.
Dan Dumas takes a look at what's happening in the Diocese of Springfield. And Steve Kiltonick with the history behind the breathtaking stained glass windows in St. Brigid's Church in Amherst. These stories are coming your way next on Reel to Reel. Hello, welcome to Reel to Reel. Last May, then Bishop Mitchell Rosansky created the Independent Task Force on the response to sexual abuse within the Diocese of Springfield, and he charged the task force with making recommendations on improving the way allegations are investigated and handled. Key in this effort, the task force has prioritized collecting data, first from a survey conducted last fall and now from a targeted effort to receive valuable input from individuals who have been sexually abused by Catholic clergy, sisters, and other church personnel. To help with this objective, the task force has engaged the services of a well-respected outside organization called Stop It Now to conduct focus groups, getting critical perspective from victims and survivors on how the Catholic Church can better promote justice and healing. Carolee McGrath was at the Thursday announcement and filed this report.
The task force was established so that we could begin this process of developing policies and also making sure that the work of the healing for people who have been victimized at the hands of clergy in the church, that amends are made and that true transparency and healing is brought.
Springfield Bishop William Byrne addressed reporters in a joint press conference with the Independent Task Force on the response to sexual abuse within the Diocese of Springfield and Stop It Now, an internationally recognized sexual abuse prevention organization. The diocese entered into a contract with Stop It Now, which will independently provide a safe forum for those who have experienced sexual abuse within the Catholic Church. Stop It Now will conduct confidential focus groups and surveys to help inform the task force, which is charged with providing recommendations to Bishop Byrne. Stop It Now has no affiliation with the Catholic Church or any other faith community.
I think it's important that we do this work, the work of the Independent Task Force and the work of this collaboration with Stop It Now, so that we can rebuild trust. We're here to tell people about Jesus Christ, but they're not going to hear it if we can't be trusted. And so it means we have to work towards transparency and communication. And an important part of that is to hear the voices of all those who have been victimized by people representing the church.
Retired Superior Court Judge Daniel Ford is the task force chairman.
But there is no more important stakeholder than the group of people who allege that they have suffered sexual abuse at the hands of priests, deacons, nuns, or other diocesan staff. We believe that it is vital, indeed essential, that they be provided with the opportunity to make their voices heard. Stop It Now will provide them with that opportunity.
The task force was created before the Judge Vilas report was released in June by then Bishop Mitchell Rosansky, who is now the Archbishop of St. Louis. In his investigation, Judge Peter Vilas, a retired Superior Court judge, found allegations of sexual abuse against former Springfield Bishop Christopher Weldon to be credible. The allegations dated back to the 1960s. Irene Woods, a licensed independent clinical social worker, is the vice chair of the task force. Woods, the founding executive director of the Children's Advocacy Center of Franklin County and North Quabbin in Greenfield, is also a mother and grandmother.
We have been meeting for a year, and certainly our first priority has always been how to give voice to the people who have been affected by sexual abuse within the Catholic Church.
Stop It Now, founded by an individual who was sexually abused, has nearly 30 years of experience of working with families and organizations.
One of the things that we know very clearly is that not only do we want to be able to submit findings that help determine next steps for the diocese in leading, healing, and recovering, but we also want to make sure that anybody who approaches us with the willingness to talk with us about their experience is treated with complete respect, with confidentiality, with compassion and understanding.
Peter Pollard, a husband and father, was sexually abused as a teenager by a Catholic priest. He has dedicated his career to helping other individuals who have experienced the same trauma and will be working with Stop It Now to conduct the surveys and focus groups.
You know, one of the real drivers for Stop It Now and the diocese's effort here is the shared conviction that healing from trauma is possible. When there's a sense of safety restored, when there's validation for the harm that's been caused, and when there's accountability.
In addition to hearing from people who have been sexually abused, the task force also conducted a survey last fall, reaching out to people in the pews, priests, and others. And all of this information will help the task force develop a strategic plan. Stop It Now encourages individuals wishing to participate to reach out through January 25th by calling 413-587-3502 and leaving a message on a confidential voicemail providing first name and callback number, or by email info@stopitnow.org, subject line You Matter. For more information, visit stopitnow.org/You Matter. In Springfield, I'm Carolee McGrath.
In other news, throughout the holiday season, the Chicopee Knights of Columbus Council 4044 would have traditionally held food drives for the less fortunate, with events like Thursday night bingo raising additional donations. But these were all canceled due to COVID-19. Their annual Thanksgiving dinner also canceled in 2020, an event normally feeding nearly 4,000 people. But despite a pandemic, Council 4044 came up with the idea of offering a drive-through food drive late last year in advance of the holidays. David Martin attended and tells us more.
Many in the community helped support the Knights of Columbus Council 4044 by driving through the Castle of Knights as volunteers wearing face masks unloaded the food from back seats and trunks onto movable carts while social distancing. The event allowed the Knights to carry on with their tradition of being charitable this time of year.
We give away everything that we take. That's all we do is donate, and we haven't been able to do that. So this is a good feeling to finally get to be the Knights of Columbus and do something. So it's been a tough year.
Council 4044 Grand Knight Matt Cook, a parishioner at St. Anne Parish in Chicopee, said they accepted any and all types of food donations, which benefit Lorraine's Soup Kitchen in Chicopee and Kate's Kitchen in Holyoke, among others. The food gets separated by categories such as canned goods, and the food pantries send their own trucks to make pickups. To get everyone in the Christmas spirit, the jolly old elf Santa Claus was in attendance to greet and thank those donating food.
Christmas, Thanksgiving, they're all about giving and doing for others, and this is a wonderful way to start that feeling, get it in the air again. There's so much between COVID and everything else, there's so much negativity right now, and this hopefully puts some really good vibes and feeling into the air, and hopefully it'll catch on and everyone will start to do a little more and start to be a little kinder.
The biggest challenge for the food drive, according to Cook, has been publicity during the pandemic because everything is closed. He is grateful to his Deputy Grand Knight, Steve DeBriel, a parishioner at St. Rose de Lima Parish in Chicopee, who chaired the event and was also instrumental in advertising.
To have the people come, I'll be excited if it's a success, and I think it will be. I've had many phone calls and I've talked to a lot of people, and people these days are looking to do something for other people. And if it's as simple as dropping off some food that can help somebody else, that's what they want to do these days.
DeBriel was pleased to observe the generosity of the community, especially during these difficult times. Santa said the food drive sponsored by the Knights of Columbus is wonderful because it helps fill a need in the community, and those volunteering and donating are definitely on his nice list.
with COVID, a lot of people were stuck at home or just it's not healthy for them to be out. So the more that we could fill food pantries and get help and get food to people, the better off. Then they don't have to put themselves at risk going to a store or anything like that. So, the Knights are doing a fantastic job here, and I couldn't be happier to be part of it.
Cook is thankful to all those whose help was essential in putting the event together. Council 4044 was planning to hold 2 additional drive-through food drives at the Castle of Knights, making sure food pantries have full shelves for the holidays. For Reel to Reel, I'm David Martin.
The Knights always do such a good job in serving the needs of the community, and I can't wait until we can all get back to those great events they host, like their famous monthly spaghetti suppers. Still to come on Reel to Reel, Dan Dumas takes a look at the latest news from Western Massachusetts. And have you ever noticed the magnificent stained glass windows in St. Brigid's Church in Amherst? Steve Kiltonick spoke with a stained glass expert and will tell us what makes them so remarkable. These stories are still ahead on Reel to Reel.
The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passion's Brother Terrence Scanlon, your Chalice host, inviting you to take time out of your busy day and join us Sunday morning. We welcome Father William Turigny as our Mass presider and celebrate the baptism of the Lord. The Chalice of Salvation, Sunday morning at 10 on 22 News, WWLP, and coming up next on Fox 23, WXXA.
Thank you, as the 2020 Annual Catholic Appeal draws to a close.
We want to give a big, heartfelt thank you to all the donors of the Annual Catholic Appeal.
Thank you, and we're very, very grateful.
Yes, thank you.
On behalf of the staff and clients of Catholic Charities, thank you.
Thank you! This message from our grant recipients is for you, the generous faithful of the Diocese of Springfield who contributed to the success of this year's campaign.
I'm Dan Dumas with your Reel to Reel news briefs. Closing out the year with an increase in contributions, the Annual Catholic Appeal also drew an additional 2,500 donors to participate. Kathy Harrington wraps up the Our Faith, Our Future campaign.
Launching the 2020 Annual Catholic Appeal on Ash Wednesday last year, the plan was to wrap up the active campaign by Divine Mercy Sunday. 2 weeks later, we were in the grips of a global pandemic, closing churches to prevent further spread of the deadly virus. But remaining united in the mission of the Church, the ministries and agencies supported by donations to the Annual Catholic Appeal continued their work. With masks, gloves, and social distancing, St. Vincent de Paul in Westfield started no-contact emergency food pickup. The Gray House also switched the market to curbside delivery of food and met the 132% increase in requests for help. Switching to remote learning, Catholic education continued. Preparing for a safe start to the school year, there was even an increase in enrollment. Catholic communications kept us connected to our faith, and viewership doubled for the Sunday Chalice of Salvation Mass. All the while, donations continued to come in. When grants were allocated in late October, there was no need to cut agency funding. As the year closed, 17,777 donors had contributed $2,539,395 to the Annual Catholic Appeal. That's an increase of $155,356.04 from 2019. Now we celebrate the faithful and generous donors who supported the campaign. I'm Kathy Harrington.
7 men are in their final months of formation on their journey to become permanent deacons. Last fall, they became lectors and acolytes during a special Mass at St. Michael's Cathedral. Carolee McGrath tells us more.
Marking another important step on their journey to become permanent deacons, 7 men were installed as lectors and acolytes in a special Mass at St. Michael's Cathedral in Springfield. The diaconate class of 2021 are in their final year of the formation program. Worcester Bishop Robert McManus, who had been the Springfield Diocese Apostolic Administrator, was the principal celebrant of the Mass, which was concelebrated by Bishop Emeritus Timothy McDonnell and Monsignor Christopher Connolly.
And in all you say and do, show forth to the world our Savior, Jesus Christ.
The men have spent nearly 4 years in formation, attending college classes at night while holding down full-time jobs and caring for their families. The lectors and acolytes are Lawrence Channel of Greenfield, Brian Hunt of Feeding Hills, Mark Arthur Jean Mary of Springfield, John Murray of South Hadley, Daniel Pratz of Chicopee, Michael Prey of Chicopee, and Jerry Shan of Wilbraham. Daniel Pratz and his wife Julie are members of St. Rose de Lima Parish in Chicopee.
God's calling me to bring me to where I'm at now, no matter who I am. We're all failures sometimes, and we all journey, and we're all striving to get to God. So this is my part as a thank you to God to bring me to where I'm at now.
As lectors and acolytes, the men will be able to read the Word of God, except for the Gospel, and bring the Eucharist to those who are homebound in nursing homes or in prisons. Michael Prey is a member of St. Stanislaus Bishop and Martyr Basilica in Chicopee. He and his wife, Christy, have 3 sons.
It's something that I just felt called, that the Lord was calling me to come to Him. I prayed a lot to say, what do you want me to do, Lord? And He pointed me this way.
Once ordained as deacons next spring, the men will be able to assist a priest during Mass, proclaim the gospel, and preach. And like a priest, they are also ordinary ministers of the sacrament of baptism. They can be married or unmarried, but cannot marry after they are ordained, and they are not paid. Mark Arthur Jean Mary and his wife Linda have 2 teenage sons and attend Holy Cross Parish in Springfield.
Jesus meant a lot to me. And for my husband, I'm so proud. I'm very proud. I'm glad he did this. And our faith is the center of our family.
While this year has been especially difficult with a pandemic, political discord, and social tension, newly installed lector and acolyte John Murray reminded people to focus on Jesus. Murray and his wife Sandy belong to St. Teresa of Lisieux in South Hadley.
Even during this difficult time that we're in, knowing that Jesus can still bring true peace. And that's what I've felt ever since I began this journey, is the true peace and presence of Jesus. And no matter what happens, I don't feel that can be taken away from me.
There are 74 active deacons in the Diocese of Springfield. In Springfield, I'm Carolee McGrath.
And remember, you can always stay informed on all the latest news in the Catholic Church locally and beyond by logging on to iobserve.org. There you can read articles written by our Catholic communication staff, as well as view archived episodes of Real to Real. That's iobserve.org. I'm Dan Dumas, and those were your Real to Real news briefs.
And finally, the magnificent stained glass windows in St. Brigid's Church in Amherst are part of the rich heritage and legacy of the parish community. Last fall, as part of the parish's 150th anniversary, parishioners learned more about the fascinating history of these treasures from a well-known stained glass conservation consultant. Steve Kiltonick visited the downtown Amherst Church and spoke to the former North Adams resident about the St. Brigid's renowned Munich-style windows.
One striking feature of St. Brigid's Church in Amherst is the series of stained glass windows that grace its interior. The windows were installed when the church was dedicated in 1925 by Bishop Thomas O'Leary, who then renamed the parish after the Irish saint. Father John O'Malley commissioned the windows to be manufactured by Franz Meyer & Company of Munich, Germany. From the mid-18th to early 19th century, Meyer was the leading designer and provider of stained glass windows in Catholic churches around the world. Its popularity among Catholics grew when the German firm became the stained glass artists to the Holy See, receiving the title of Pontifical Institution of Art from the Vatican in 1892. On September 20th, 2020, Julie Sloan, a nationally recognized stained glass conservation consultant, presented a lecture on St. Brigid's windows as part of the parish's 150th anniversary, which is being celebrated this year. The windows portray 11 of the important events in the life of Christ, including the presentation of Jesus in the temple, the visitation of Mary to Elizabeth, the Nativity, one with the 3 wise men, the other with shepherds, the wedding feast at Cana, the resurrection, the Annunciation by the angel Gabriel, the Ascension of Christ into heaven, the Transfiguration on Mount Tabor, the Last Supper, Jesus with doubting Apostle Thomas, Jesus curing the paralyzed man, and the flight to Egypt, which was adopted in 1992 by the United States Historical Society for its commemorative plate. Raised Catholic in upstate New York, Sloan hails from a family of architects and builders. As a young girl, she often visited relatives in Elmira, who took her to the Corning Museum of Glass. In 1982, after receiving a bachelor's in art history, Sloan pursued a master's in historic preservation at Columbia University.
I was looking for a thesis, and a class in stained glass was offered. And when I asked the teacher, okay, this is how you make stained glass, but how do you restore it? He said, oh, he didn't know. So, great, here's a subject that the teacher doesn't even know how to do. So I wrote my thesis on the conservation of stained glass.
This was the beginning of her love affair in stained glass conservation, which eventually led to her establishing her own stained glass consulting business. Over the years, Sloan has authored or co-authored numerous books on stained glass, including Conservation of Stained Glass in America. She also presents seminars and lectures extensively on stained glass history and conservation. American-made stained glass is her specialty.
My mission is to increase the appreciation of 19th and 20th century stained glass in the United States. In order to get people to take care of their windows, I have learned that I have to build ownership, and it's not, I do that by teaching people about the history of the windows and how they're made, and trying to deepen appreciation that it's not just pretty religious pictures or pretty civic pictures, whatever, that it's a material that does need to be conserved properly.
Meyer of Munich was an enormous studio that employed over 300 workers, each of whom performed a specific task.
You'd have people whose only job was to cut glass. You'd have people whose only job was to paint faces or to paint flowers or to paint architecture. You'd have people whose only job was to glaze the window together and people whose only job was to waterproof it. And that was common.
The first Meyer stained glass windows in Massachusetts were installed in Boston's Catholic churches during the 1850s.
It's a highly detailed, highly sentimentalized, good biblical stories, and usually they could produce an entire program, the life of Christ, and that's generally what you see. And in Catholic churches, as opposed to Protestant churches,
although windows could be similar from one church to the next, each is made with slight variations depending on the individual artist.
One of the interesting things about St. Brigid's is that there is no window of the crucifixion, and I can't tell you why. It goes from the Last Supper to the resurrection. One of the fascinating things to me about St. Brigid's windows is that under every scene is a cherub's head in the middle, and every single one of them is different. So they were obviously painted individually. They are not stenciled. They're not silk screened. They're all these cute little individual angels.
There are also various smaller windows that depict saints, including St. Francis Xavier, St. William, St. John the Evangelist, and St. Cecilia. 3 of St. Brigid's windows feature the Meyer signature prominently at the bottom of each window. Father John Smeagol has been admiring the Meyer windows for nearly 20 years from the altar.
Anyone that comes to the church for the first time has to be impressed not only with the windows but all the architecture and the sculpture that's here.
For Father John, the windows are more than just beautiful art.
It's just an amazing construction of what the life of Christ was really like. And it becomes a teaching tool. Anytime you have a Christmas or Easter or any of the sacraments, the windows become a great teaching tool of what Christ's life was like and why he was here.
Father John extended an invitation to Sloan after Sloan's cousin, parishioner Chris Nelson, asked if she would be willing to speak on the windows during the parish's anniversary. Close to 40 people listened intently to Sloan's soup to nuts PowerPoint presentation. She touched on Meyer & Company's history, the manufacturing of stained glass, and the history of St. Brigid's windows, all to deepen an appreciation of the windows not only as art but as objects. Sloan discussed the window depicting the resurrection.
This is the focal point, the beneficent face of the Savior doing what he came here to do. He carries the banner of heaven, and behind him are the 3 crosses on Golgotha. But if you take a moment to look at other details, you'll be richly rewarded. Here are the 2 soldiers who were guarding the tomb, one in blue armor on the left, who's almost hidden in the shadow of Christ and seems to be just waking up. The other in yellow, holding his shield up against the brilliance of the Lord. At the very bottom of each window is a framed panel with a passage that identifies the scene. This is the one that goes with the resurrection window, quoting the Gospel of St. Matthew.
The others painstakingly researched the biblical time period to make sure all the flower, fauna, and other vegetation was accurately depicted.
Another aspect that I find interesting in looking at windows like these is the faces. Although they are idealized, they do depict real living people, the models used by the window's designers. Sometimes we'll see the same person depicted more than once in a window. These 2 guys are clearly based on the same model, a fellow with hollow, craggy cheeks.
Sloan noted that the face of Jesus is also not portrayed the same in various images.
Many of their images were based on religious paintings, some from the Renaissance or the Baroque age, but many created by a group of 19th century German painters who lived in Rome and called themselves the Nazarenes.
The average lifespan of stained glass windows is approximately 100 years. Usually it's the lead that holds the glass pieces together which deteriorates over time. In 1995, 13 of St. Brigid's windows were taken apart, re-leaded, and restored by our stained glass restorations in Hamden. Sloan praised the parish for maintaining the windows over the years.
St. Brigid's is fortunate to have such wonderful windows, and I commend you for taking such good care of them. In this, your 150th anniversary year, let us hope they will continue to bring you joy and inspiration for another 150 years.
Although St. Brigid's anniversary year coincides with the pandemic, parishioners welcomed a silver lining during troubled times. Magnificent stained glass windows for all to admire and appreciate long after the masks are gone. For Real to Real, I'm Steve Kiltonic.
At least 2 other parishes in the Springfield Diocese have Franz Mayer windows gracing their churches, St. Peter in Great Barrington and St. Joseph's in Stockbridge. If you think your parish may also have Mayer windows, look for the telltale signature at the bottom of one of the windows and let us know. Priceless works of art for sure, and St. Brigid's will continue to celebrate their 150th anniversary on Monday, February 1st, with a very special Mass and event entitled Celebrating Catholic Hope. For more information, you can call the parish at 413-256-6181. And for this week, that's Real to Real. As always, to keep up with all of the latest news on the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and around the world, check out our news and information site, iobserve.org. Also, you can friend us on Facebook at Catholic Communications. And before we close, a special word of thanks to all who responded so generously to our Catholic Communications Christmas appeal. Your donations were gratefully accepted. I will see you right back here next week for another edition of Real to Real, your window on the world around you. See you then.
Real to Real is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.
Thank you, as the 2020 Annual Catholic Appeal draws to a close.
Le quiero dar las gracias a esos que donaron por el Annual Catholic Appeal.
Thank you to the Annual Catholic Appeal donors.
We want to thank all who support the Annual Catholic Appeal.
Thank you from Homercast to all the wonderful Annual Catholic Appeal donors.
This message from our grant recipients is for you, the generous faithful of the Diocese of Springfield.